Most people think a broken laptop is worthless. Once the screen cracks or the motherboard dies, it goes in a drawer for a year, then in the trash. John used to think the same thing. Then he learned something most people never bother to check. Inside every old phone, every dead laptop, every broken circuit board, there's real gold. Not metaphorical gold. Actual gold, silver, copper, and palladium, soldered directly into the components. Because these metals conduct electricity better than almost anything else on Earth. The problem is, nobody wants to deal with it. It's heavy. It's ugly. It smells like dust and old plastic. Recycling centers charge a fee just to take it off your hands. So people throw it away for free, or worse, pay someone else to throw it away for them. But John started small. He posted one ad on a local marketplace app. Free pickup for old electronics, computers, and broken phones, no questions asked. Within a week, his garage was full. Old desktops with cracked cases. Dead laptops missing keys. A box of cracked iPhones someone's mom had been saving for no reason, the kind every family has sitting in a closet somewhere. None of it worked. None of it looked like money. John didn't sell any of it. Instead, he took it apart. He pulled the circuit boards out of every single device. The motherboards, the RAM sticks, the processors, the expansion cards. He separated them by type, because not all boards are equal, and treating them the same way wastes value. A motherboard from a laptop is worth more than a board from a remote control. A gold-plated CPU pin is worth more than a plastic connector that just looks like metal. Most people don't know the difference between real gold plating and cheap gold-colored paint. John learned it in a weekend, mostly by watching old forum threads from recyclers who'd done this for decades. He bought a small refining kit. Nitric acid, sulfuric acid, a few glass containers, some safety gear, gloves, a respirator mask. Total cost, under $300, almost all of it from the same supplier jewelers use for melting scrap. He started with the highest value boards first. Old computer processors from the 1990s and early 2000s have far more gold than modern ones. Manufacturers used thicker gold plating back then, before gold prices rose and companies started cutting corners. John processed his first batch. 12 pounds of gold-plated pins and connectors, separated by hand over 2 evenings at his kitchen table. After dissolving the base metals and precipitating the gold back out, he recovered 14 grams of pure gold. At the time, that gold was worth over $900. His cost for that batch, including the free electronics and the refining chemicals, was less than $40. He sold it to a local refinery that buys directly from small-scale recyclers. No questions asked about where it came from, since the answer was always the same. People threw it away. Then a problem showed up. His neighbors complained about the smell. The refining process released fumes, sharp and chemical, and someone eventually called the city about it. John got a polite but firm letter explaining that residential zoning didn't allow for chemical processing of any kind, hobby or not. John couldn't keep doing this in a garage. So he rented a small, ventilated storage unit on the edge of town, the kind nobody else wanted because it had no insulation and bad lighting. Most renters avoided it. For John, the bad lighting didn't matter, and the lack of insulation meant the fumes didn't linger. He installed a proper fume extraction system, a simple fan and filter setup vented through the back wall. Cost, $1,200. A real expense, but a one-time one, and it meant he never had to worry about complaints again. With that fixed, John scaled up. He partnered with a local recycler who sells him scrap electronics by the pound instead of by the piece, for almost nothing. Computers nobody wants. Office liquidations after a company downsizes. School district upgrades, where hundreds of identical desktops get replaced at once, and the old ones are considered a disposal cost rather than an asset. His volume jumped fast. Within 2 months, he was processing more material than he could refine alone, sometimes 300 or 400 pounds sitting in his storage unit waiting to be sorted. So John brought in James, a friend with a chemistry background from a few semesters of community college, to help run a second batch line. James didn't have any startup capital, having just finished paying off his own tuition. John didn't have enough time, since he was still working a separate job during the day. Together, they had both halves of what the business needed. They split the work cleanly. John handled sourcing and sorting, driving out to pick up donated electronics and breaking them down into categories. James handled refining and quality control, running the actual chemical extraction and making sure each batch met a consistent purity standard before it went to a buyer. Then a bigger problem showed up. A buyer rejected an entire shipment. James had recovered nearly 40 grams of mixed gold and silver from a large batch, but during a long night of processing, he'd accidentally combined two different grades of material. The refinery's assay came back lower than expected once they tested the mixed batch, and they docked the payment by almost 30% to account for the lower average purity. It was the first real financial hit since they'd started. Nearly $600 in lost value from one mistake. John and James didn't panic, and they didn't blame each other either. They just fixed the process. They built a simple sorting station with 3 separate labeled bins, high-grade gold pins, mixed metal boards, and low-value scrap that wasn't worth refining at all. Nothing got refined until it was sorted and verified twice, once during initial breakdown, and once again right before it went into the acid bath. They never made that mistake again. In his first year, John processed over 600 pounds of circuit boards, more material than most people see in their entire lives, all of it sourced for free or close to it. Total recovered gold, silver, and palladium, sold to a refinery buyer in batches throughout the year, came out to just under $40,000. Total cost that year, including the chemicals, the storage unit rental, the extraction system, James's share of the profit, and the recycler's wholesale rate, were under $9,000. That's a profit most people would assume came from stocks or crypto, something with charts and tickers and apps. It came from a garbage pile, sitting in a storage unit nobody else wanted, next to electronics nobody else would touch. Today, John doesn't even refine most of it himself anymore. He and James sell sorted, high-grade boards directly to refineries who pay a premium for pre-sorted, verified material, skipping the labor-intensive chemical step entirely for most of their volume. Less work, steady income, almost no competition, because almost nobody else is willing to deal with a pile of broken electronics that smells like dust and looks like trash. Every year, the world throws away enough electronics to fill skyscrapers, mountains of phones and laptops and circuit boards that most people never think about twice. Most of it ends up in landfills, buried and forgotten. John and James just make sure some of it ends up in their bank account first.